The old maid was on her knees when the billionaire's fiancé accused her of stealing. A silver tray lay beside her on the marble floor. White roses had scattered across the grand dining room. A crystal glass rolled under the long wedding table and stopped near the pointed heel of Claudia Voss's designer shoe. Claudia stood above the old woman in a fitted emerald gown, diamonds glittering at her throat, her perfect blonde hair pinned beneath soft chandelier light. In front of 40 wealthy guests, she pointed at the small leather book in the maid's trembling hand. "Where did you get that?" Claudia asked coldly. The old maid looked down at the book. It was worn at the edges. Brown leather. Faded gold corners. A thin ribbon tucked between the pages like it had been loved for decades. "I found it in the kitchen, miss," the maid said quietly. Claudia laughed. Not loudly. Worse. Softly. The kind of laugh that made everyone in the room understand exactly who had power and who did not. "In the kitchen." Claudia repeated. "How convenient." The guests glanced at one another. No one defended the maid. No one asked why Claudia's smile looked so cruel. No one noticed the way the old maid's fingers tightened around the book, not with fear, but with memory. Claudia stepped closer. "This book belonged to the Romano family," she said. "It was kept in a locked cabinet. And now it's in your hands." The old maid lifted her eyes. For 1 second, something sharp and elegant flashed behind the tired expression on her face. Then it disappeared. "I did not steal it," she said. Claudia's eyes narrowed. "Of course not. People like you never steal. You simply touch what was never meant for you." A few guests looked away. At the far end of the room, Sebastian Romano had just entered through the open villa doors. He stopped. He was 38, tall, handsome, controlled, wearing a black tuxedo that looked as if it had never known a wrinkle. He was the billionaire owner of Romano Resorts, a luxury empire stretching from Venice to Monaco to New York. But in that moment, all his money meant nothing. Because his fiancée was humiliating an old maid in his family villa. And the book in that maid's hand looked exactly like the one his mother used to keep in the kitchen when he was a child. Sebastian took one slow step forward. "Claudia," he said. The room froze. Claudia turned quickly, her face changing at once. The coldness vanished. A soft, wounded smile replaced it. "Sebastian," she said. "Thank God you're here. I caught this maid with something from your mother's private cabinet." The old maid lowered her head. The book stayed against her chest. Sebastian stared at it. His voice dropped. "Where did you get that book?" The maid did not answer right away. And what no one in that room knew was that the woman kneeling on the floor was not a maid at all. She was Sebastian Romano's mother. 3 days earlier, Evelyn Romano had stood in front of a mirror inside her private suite above the sea, holding a grey wig in one hand and a plain-made cap in the other. At 72, Evelyn was still the kind of woman people made room for before they knew why. She had silver hair usually styled in soft waves, dark intelligent eyes, and the calm posture of someone born into wealth but educated by grief. She was not loud. She did not need to be. Her late husband had built Romano Resorts from 3 old hotels and one impossible dream. Evelyn had protected the family name after his death, negotiated with bankers who underestimated her, and raised Sebastian through scandals, board wars, and lonely dinners in oversized rooms. But now Sebastian barely listened to her. Not since Claudia Voss entered his life. Claudia was beautiful, polished, and impossible to criticize without sounding jealous. She called Evelyn mother in public, though Evelyn had never invited it. She spoke about charity with wet eyes. She complimented staff when cameras were present. She held Sebastian's hand like a woman saving him from loneliness. Everyone loved her. Sebastian believed he did. Evelyn did not. There was something too careful about Claudia's kindness. Too rehearsed. She always knew who was watching. She smiled at waiters when Sebastian turned his head, then wiped her fingers as if kindness had touched dirt. Evelyn had seen enough women like her. But every time she warned Sebastian, he pulled away. "You never approve of anyone," he had said one night in the villa garden. Evelyn had looked at her son across the moonlit fountain. "I do not need to approve of perfection," she replied. "I need to trust character." Sebastian's jaw tightened. Claudia makes me happy. No, Evelyn said gently. She makes you feel chosen. That had hurt him. She saw it. And because she was his mother, it hurt her too. Sebastian left the garden without another word. So Evelyn made a decision that night. She would stop warning him. She would stop arguing. She would simply see the truth with her own eyes. The next morning, Evelyn sent her personal assistant away, cancelled 3 charity meetings, and called the oldest housekeeper at Villa Romano. Marina, she said, I need a temporary uniform. Marina nearly dropped the phone. Signora Romano. And a name, Evelyn added. A name. Yes. A simple one. There was a long pause. Then Marina whispered, Mrs. Nora. Evelyn looked out at the sea. Mrs. Nora will do. By sunset, Evelyn Romano disappeared. Mrs. Nora arrived. She wore a plain black maid dress, a white apron, flat shoes, a grey wig, and no jewelry except one thing hidden beneath the uniform. A tiny silver locket Sebastian had given her when he was 8. Inside it was a picture of him covered in flour, standing beside her in the old villa kitchen. That kitchen had once been the heart of the house. Before luxury designers removed half the warmth. Before Claudia called it outdated. Before Sebastian forgot that the best memories in Villa Romano had not been made under chandeliers. They had been made near the stove. The first person Claudia met that morning was Mrs. Nora. The disguised old maid stood near the breakfast terrace holding a tray of coffee cups. Claudia swept in wearing white silk, sunglasses, and impatience. You're new, Claudia said. Yes, miss. Claudia looked her up and down. Temporary. Yes, miss. Good, Claudia said. Then you'll learn quickly. In this villa, slow staff are replaced. Mrs. Nora bowed her head. Of course. At that moment, Sebastian walked onto the terrace. Claudia's voice changed instantly. Oh, there you are, she said sweetly. Your new maid is adorable. Isn't she? Sebastian barely looked at the maid. He was reading a message on his phone. Welcome to Villa Romano, he said politely. Mrs. Nora lowered her eyes. Thank you, sir. He did not recognize his mother's voice. Not under the softness. Not under the years of distance between them. And for the first time in Evelyn Romano's life, she understood what it felt like to be invisible in her own house. By the second day, Mrs. Nora had learned the shape of Claudia's true face. It did not appear all at once. It appeared in small moments. In the way Claudia handed her empty coffee cup without looking at her. In the way she snapped her fingers instead of saying a name. In the way she smiled at Sebastian, then turned and whispered, Not that glass, the clean one, as if Mrs. Nora had brought dirt from the street instead of crystal from the cabinet. Evelyn had spent her life inside wealth. She knew manners could be purchased. But kindness could not. That morning, Villa Romano was preparing for the wedding rehearsal dinner. Florists filled the terrace with white orchids. Violinists practiced near the fountain. Chefs moved between the kitchen and dining hall with trays of fruit, pastry, and silver bowls of sauce. Outside, the blue Italian sea glittered like something painted for rich people to admire. Mrs. Nora stood in the kitchen, tying fresh linen around a breadbasket, when Claudia entered with her wedding planner. I want the staff invisible tonight, Claudia said. The planner nodded quickly. Of course. No lingering. No asking questions. No touching guests' coats unless asked. And no old staff near the main table. Mrs. Nora looked down at the bread. The wedding planner hesitated. Old staff. Claudia's eyes moved toward Mrs. Nora. Yes, she said. Some people make a villa feel like a museum. Mrs. Nora said nothing. Claudia stepped closer and reached into the breadbasket. She lifted one roll, inspected it, then dropped it back as though it disappointed her. You, she said. Mrs. Nora raised her head. Yes, miss. Carry the flower urns from the east hall to the terrace. The planner blinked. Those are marble, Claudia. 2 men usually. Claudia cut her off with a smile. Mrs. Nora said she wanted to be useful. Mrs. Nora had said no such thing. but she only bowed her head. "Yes, miss." The first urn was heavier than it looked. White roses overflowed from the top, and the marble base pressed hard into Evelyn's hands. She carried it slowly through the hall, her back aching, her breath careful and quiet. Halfway to the terrace, Sebastian appeared at the top of the staircase. He looked down. For one moment, his eyes narrowed. Should she be carrying that alone? Claudia turned so fast her smile arrived before her words. "Oh, darling, I asked for help, but she insisted. Some older staff are so proud." Mrs. Nora lifted her eyes. Sebastian looked at her. "Is that true?" Evelyn could have ended the test right there. She could have removed the wig, straightened her back, and watched Claudia collapse beneath her own lie. But one lie was never enough to reveal a person. A mask did not fall because of one crack. So Mrs. Nora lowered her head. "I can manage, sir." Sebastian frowned, but his phone rang before he could answer. He stepped away toward the balcony. Claudia waited until he was gone. Then she leaned close enough for only Mrs. Nora to hear. "Good girl," she whispered. "You learn quickly." Evelyn's hands tightened around the urn. Not because of the insult. Because of the ease. Claudia did not even need anger to be cruel. It came naturally. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Nora was sent to the bridal suite with tea. Claudia sat before a mirror while two stylists adjusted her hair. Her emerald rehearsal gown hung on a stand nearby, glittering under soft lights. On the vanity lay a stack of documents. Evelyn noticed the Romano family crest on the top page. She placed the tea tray down carefully. Claudia did not look at her. "Don't touch anything." "Yes, miss." One stylist smiled politely at Mrs. Nora, but Claudia saw it in the mirror. "Don't encourage them," she said. The stylist froze. Claudia lifted a diamond earring. Staff become familiar when people treat them like guests. Mrs. Nora turned to leave. Then Claudia's phone buzzed. She answered without lowering her voice. "Yes, I saw the old wing," Claudia said. "It's useless. After the wedding, Sebastian will agree. The villa should become a private members' resort. His mother is sentimental, but she won't be a problem forever." Evelyn stopped at the doorway. Her fingers tightened around the empty tray. Claudia laughed softly. "No, no. We'll call it a wellness transition. A private residence in Switzerland. Very tasteful. Sebastian won't fight it if the doctors say she needs calm." The room seemed to lose air. Evelyn stood perfectly still. His mother. She was talking about his mother. About her. One stylist looked uncomfortable. Claudia continued, brushing a speck of powder from her wrist. "And the children's kitchen fund? Move it under my foundation after the wedding. I am not spending Romano money feeding staff families and village children. We need something more elegant. Fashion scholarships. Gala-friendly. Photogenic." Mrs. Nora turned slowly. The family kitchen fund had been Evelyn's project for 12 years. It paid for meals, school lunches, groceries, and emergency support for families connected to the villa, the village, and the old Romano hotel staff. Sebastian had forgotten half of it. Evelyn had not. Claudia ended the call and finally noticed the maid still standing there. Her expression darkened. "Why are you still here?" Mrs. Nora looked at her. "I was waiting to take the tray, miss." Claudia stood. "Were you listening?" "No, miss." The lie tasted bitter. Claudia crossed the room and picked up the old leather recipe book from the side table. Evelyn's heart stopped. She had left it in the kitchen that morning, wrapped in cloth. Her grandmother's handwriting was inside. Her own notes were beside it. Sebastian's childhood favorites were marked with little stars. Claudia held it with 2 fingers. "What is this ugly thing?" Mrs. Nora kept her voice calm. "A kitchen book. It smells old. It belongs here." Claudia laughed. "Nothing old belongs here after the wedding." She tossed the book toward Mrs. Nora. Evelyn caught it against her chest. Too quickly. Too protectively. Claudia noticed. Her eyes sharpened. "That book matters to you." Mrs. Nora looked down. "It matters to the house." Claudia stepped closer. No. Houses don't care. People like you care because old things make you feel important. The words landed softly, but inside Evelyn, something ancient and wounded opened its eyes. That evening, when the sun began to sink behind the sea, Sebastian found Claudia on the terrace, greeting guests with both hands extended and perfect warmth in her voice. "My love," she said, kissing his cheek. "Everything is ready." Sebastian looked toward the kitchen doors, where Mrs. Nora stood silently with the recipe book hidden inside her servant bag. For a moment, he frowned. "Have you seen my mother's old kitchen book?" Claudia's smile barely moved. "No, darling. Why?" "I thought I saw it earlier." Claudia touched his arm. "You're probably just tired." Across the terrace, Mrs. Nora watched her son accept that answer. And for the first time since the test began, Evelyn was afraid. Not for herself. For Sebastian. Because Claudia did not just lie well. She lied softly enough to sound like love. The rehearsal dinner began under a sky the color of warm gold. Villa Romano glowed above the cliffs, its white stone terraces opening toward the sea. Music floated through the gardens. Crystal glasses shone beneath the lanterns. Guests from Paris, London, Dubai, and New York moved around the courtyard, smiling as if every flower had bloomed just to impress them. Claudia Voss moved through them like a queen already crowned. She touched shoulders, kissed cheeks, laughed softly beside the children's charity display. Whenever Sebastian looked at her, she became gentle, grateful, perfect. But Mrs. Nora saw the moments between. She saw Claudia's smile vanish when a waiter stepped too close. She saw her wipe her hand after shaking the chef's hand. She saw her lean toward the wedding planner and whisper, "Keep the old staff away from the photographs. They ruin the look." Evelyn Romano, hidden beneath the grey wig and Maid cap, held a tray of lemon water and said nothing. She had not come to hear one insult. She had come to see a pattern. And now the pattern was standing in front of her, wrapped in silk. Across the terrace, Sebastian watched Claudia with a tired softness in his eyes. He wanted peace. Evelyn knew that. He had spent so many years building hotels, signing deals, burying grief, and pretending loneliness was discipline. Claudia offered him a beautiful answer to an empty life. But beautiful answers could still be lies. A young kitchen assistant named Lucia hurried past carrying a heavy bread basket. She was 19, nervous, and trying too hard not to spill anything. Her younger brother's medicine had been paid twice by the Romano Kitchen Fund, the same fund Claudia wanted to move under her own name after the wedding. One small roll slipped from the basket and fell onto the terrace floor. Lucia froze. Claudia saw it. Her face brightened with cruel opportunity. "Lucia," she called. The girl turned pale. "Yes, Miss Voss." Claudia walked over slowly. "Guests watching now. If we wanted village service," she said lightly, "we would have hosted this dinner in the village." A few guests laughed because they thought they were supposed to. Lucia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, miss." She bent to pick up the bread. Claudia placed the tip of her silver heel beside it. "Leave it," she said. "Let Mrs. Nora clean it. She seems attached to old kitchen things." Mrs. Nora stepped forward calmly. Sebastian's eyes followed her. There it was again. That strange pull in his chest. The way the old maid lowered herself carefully. The way her hand moved toward the floor. The quiet dignity in her silence. It reminded him of Sunday mornings when he was 8 years old, sitting on a kitchen counter while his mother kneaded bread and told him, "Never be ashamed of work that feeds people." He blinked. The memory came so sharply, it almost hurt. Claudia turned and noticed his face. "Darling?" she asked sweetly. Sebastian looked at Mrs. Nora. "You don't have to do that." The old maid paused. For 1 second, her eyes lifted to his. Sebastian stopped breathing. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. But before he could speak, Claudia laughed softly. "Oh, Sebastian, please. You cannot rescue every servant from basic work." The word servant landed badly. Even the violinist missed a note. Mrs. Nora picked up the bread and stood. Her back ached, but her voice stayed soft. Work is not shameful, miss. Claudia's smile vanished. No, she said. But forgetting your place is. Silence spread across the terrace. Sebastian stared at Claudia. This time, he did not look away. And hidden inside Mrs. Nora's servant bag, the old recipe book waited like a memory ready to open. That night, Mrs. Nora returned to the villa kitchen alone. The old recipe book sat on the wooden table before her, its leather cover worn soft by generations of hands. Evelyn opened it slowly. The first page still carried her grandmother's handwriting. Food is not served to impress the rich. Food is served to remind the lonely they are home. Evelyn touched the words with trembling fingers. For years, she had believed Sebastian remembered. But maybe money had buried too much. Behind her, footsteps clicked against the tile. Claudia entered. She was no longer smiling. What are you doing with that book again? Mrs. Nora closed it gently, putting it back where it belongs. Claudia walked closer. Nothing belongs anywhere until I decide what this villa becomes after the wedding. Mrs. Nora looked at her. And what will it become? A place worthy of Sebastian, Claudia said. Not a shrine to dead recipes, old servants, and village charity cases. Evelyn's breath stayed calm, but her heart hardened. Claudia picked up the book and flipped through the pages with disgust. Handwritten menus. Soup notes. Bread instructions. She laughed. This is embarrassing. It fed this house for decades. It trapped this house in the past. Mrs. Nora's eyes lifted. And the kitchen fund. Claudia froze. A small mistake. Too small for anyone else to notice. But Evelyn noticed everything. What did you say? Claudia asked. I heard staff mention it, Mrs. Nora said softly. Claudia stepped closer, voice low. Listen carefully, old woman. After I marry Sebastian, that fund will be changed. The old staff will be replaced. And people like you will not stand in the way of my future. Mrs. Nora held her gaze. People like me. Claudia smiled coldly. People who mistake service for importance. Then she snatched the recipe book from the table. At tomorrow's dinner, Claudia whispered, I'll show Sebastian exactly why old Maid should never touch family things. And for the first time, Evelyn knew the test was almost over.